broken Kanu's way, and Dahui's right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?
Hello Arsenal fans, welcome back to Can You Believe It, an Arsenal podcast. And, well, that was something last night, wasn't it? A 3-0 defeat to Aston Villa at home. And what makes it even worse is that it's before an international break. Unfortunately, I am going to talk about the game. I'm also going to talk about more structural things with the team, with the side. I'm also going to talk about Arteta, obviously, and maybe, hopefully, this being a moment for him to really decide to let it all go and just go for the attack from now on. But we'll get to that. I'll talk about the performance, talk about two players who are in really bad form, lack of creativity, and I'll also answer some listener questions as well. And I have more this week, so thank you for that. If you want to ask a question, at AFC Met on Twitter. Right, so let's get into this. So we started team selection wise with Leno in goal, Bellerin, Holding, Gabriel and Tierney, Partey, Elneny, Bukayo Saka, Willian, Lacazette, Aubameyang. So basically the exact same team from the Man United game, which we performed so well. And I think this was maybe the start of the issue, because I think now you can argue that the players are warranted to keep in the same side because they performed so well at Old Trafford. And I was here on this podcast saying that they all deserved high praise last week, but that's against Manchester United away from home. It's against a so-called Big Six side, even if Manchester United have been really poor this season. And I think those games are isolated games. I think the rest of the games you have to line up differently. And I think I can say that very easily now in hindsight, but I remember on Thursday against Molde, I thought Dani Ceballos, for example, had a really good game, or Joe Willock had a really good game. Now, I'm not saying that Joe Willock should have started, or I'm not saying Ceballos should have started, but I think it's worth questioning having a different setup when you're at home to a so-called smaller team. So the performance is where we got to start. Obviously, we conceded within 50 seconds with a goal from McGinn. I mean, it was a great finish. I don't think Leno could have done much towards that, but it was disallowed. So we got a kind of justice for the Leicester VAR decision that went against us. So there's that. I think that should have been a warning shot from Arsenal. It really wasn't, though, because I think we just continue to play poorly. Now, I think, surprisingly enough, this is a game which just hammers home the fact that we are just not good going forward, and we just look very rigid in terms of our system and our structure. We have no creativity, and I'll get to that more later in the episode. But what was really bad about this game is that we were poor defensively as well. We were all over the shop at times. Bellerin didn't really have a good game. I'm one of his bigger fans. He had great movement going forward. He always does, but I don't think he was very good going back. Bukayo Saka, you could say, had a bad game if you consider him part of the back five, if you will, at left wing back. I don't think he had a good game. And Tierney, if there was ever a moment that summed up the Arsenal performance, it was the slip while he was trying to pass it from Kieran Tierney. So, yeah, it wasn't the best performance. Rob Holding also didn't really have a good performance. Defensively, it wasn't good enough. And then we concede first. So we concede through Bukayo Saka own goal. It was great combination play. Grealish, Barkley and Target combined really well on the left. It all started from Willian giving the ball away, and it was a great cross across the defence, and Saka, unfortunately, he was trying to clear it, but it went into the goal. So it was a bit disappointing to go behind in that way. Then we had a really good chance just after that, and it was Lacazette heading over the bar, and it was a really poor miss. And that was a bit worrying as well, because again, Lacazette has been missing a lot of chances recently. So we go in at half-time at 1-0 down. And then we bring on Ceballos for Partey, because Partey has an injury. And I don't think that helped as well. Obviously, if Ceballos was going to come on, it was a good change to bring on. It would have been for El Neni, but for Partey to come off with an injury is not good. And obviously, that's worrying going forward. Hopefully, he's okay. And then Pepe and Nketiah came on. Both of them kind of added a tiny bit of something, but it wasn't incredible. And then Ollie Watkins scores twice. And it was just, we just looked very soft going back. And that's not something I've said about Arsenal this season. We looked soft. And the combination play from Villa, to be fair, was fantastic. And I think for a neutral, you will enjoy watching Villa play. And they are a great team. But it goes back to the fact for Arsenal that we are just really bad going forward. We play on the margins way too much as a team. We hope to keep a clean sheet and nick a 1-0. Now, you could say that this works back in the day, maybe in the 90s, 1-0 to the Arsenal. We loved it. But I just don't think you can do that now. Back then, Arsenal weren't the top of the league wasn't as competitive as it is now. There are 6 big teams, and then you got Leicester, Everton, Wolves, Villa, now Leeds, all vying for those positions, all challenging their game. And I think the only way that you can really assert your dominance as a team, as a big side, is by being adventurous, being brave. I'm not saying go gung-ho, but just being brave in your attacks. And there is just none of that. If you look at the stats for the game, as I'll just get them up here, we had 13 shots, 2 on target. That's poor. I don't think Emi Martinez really had that big of a trouble. There was the Rob Holding chance in the second half where he blasted it wide. He should have scored, really, but obviously that's the defender. We had loads of pointless possession, and it's very similar to the Leicester game, but at least with the Leicester game, you could say in the first half we were creating some chances and we looked coherent, if unspectacular, in that game. In this game, we not only didn't create chances, we also failed to be good defensively as well. We were very sloppy and we were just poor all over the shop. And it just goes back to the fact of 2 players for me that I'm going to single out as poor performers. And I think most Arsenal fans know who I'm going to say. Lacazette and Willian. I'll start with Willian first. Now, Willian was a deal I think I've mentioned many times on this podcast. It was a deal that I did not like. Not because I think Willian is a bad player. At the time of the signing, I thought Willian was a good player, but maybe getting on a bit, and maybe it's a deal we should avoid. Or if you are really insistent on signing him, then you sign him for a short amount of time. I think Manchester United signed Edison Cavani for 1 year, maybe maximum 2. But we decided to sign him for 3 years. And I think Arsenal fans argued that 3-year deal could be good in the first year and then hope that maybe the second and the third year are not as bad as people projected. So we started the season, the Fulham game, he was good. He assisted twice, should have scored a goal as well. And he looked good. He looked creative. He looked like he fit the system really well. But ever since that game, he has been poor. He's been lightweight. He's been pretty lazy. He looks slow. And I think Chelsea fans probably are laughing at us because they can't believe their luck that they've managed to get another player to leave their club who is getting on a bit and to somehow come to us and get worse. And a lot of people have gone crazy about Willian, and that's fair enough. I mean, he was bad. He had 2 chances in the game and missed them both. And he was rightly hooked off for Pepe. And I think the argument that he should start ahead of Pepe is something that no Arsenal fan can really understand at the moment. I think Willian is a good system player. He is tidy in possession. In concept, he is supposed to be creative. He is supposed to make the attack better. But how can you make he's not going to be the player that's going to make a bad attack good. So we have to try something else. Pepe had an indifferent performance against Mulder, but he still scored and laid one off for Joe Willock. That's what we're missing. We're missing end product. We're missing just something different because it's all slow. It's all very rigid at the moment. And I think Arsenal need to be a bit more adventurous in how they attack forward. So Willian, it's time for him to take a place on the bench. And I think there's questions to be asked of Edu, of Arteta, for bringing him in. I mean, fine, it's an easy, convenient deal that you can do. It's a free transfer. But doing the easy, convenient deal is not always the best option. Sky Sports always put out this team every year where they say, oh, these are the players available for free transfers. 99% of the time, these players that are available for free transfers do not go to a big side. You'll obviously get the occasional Sol Campbell goes to Arsenal, or even in recent memory, Zlatan Ibrahimovic going to Manchester United, where it works. But very rarely does a free transfer work that well. And this is just another deal where we've done a short-term deal to try and fix this now when that shouldn't be the priority. Obviously, the other performance that I mentioned earlier was Lacazette, and Lacazette had a really poor game as well. I mentioned the chance earlier, which he headed over the bar, which was really poor. Should have scored. Obviously, headers are very difficult chances in terms of XG. Anyone who knows their way around underlying metrics will tell you that headers are not high quality chances, but he should be doing better there, at least hitting the target. There was just no conviction in it at all. And like I said again, in the Leicester game, when he was sloppy, that's what he is. And then he looks knackered after 60 minutes and he has to come off. And the justification to using Lacazette as a striker is that his link-up is good. He brings other people into the game. But if he's doing none of that and he's in poor form, then he shouldn't play. Simple as that. Then probably in Arteta's mind, he'll probably pick Eze and Nketiah. But the obvious option is to play Aubameyang through the centre. And offset him with other players who are more technically secure on the ball. Like a Bukayo Saka. I like him in central midfield. I like him playing the left zone in that role. He plays it well, even though he was poor last night. But if the attack is suffering, play him in the attack, because at least he's a technically secure player. You've got Reece Nelson, who obviously missed out the Molde game with an injury. He should be back for the next Europa League game, which will be good. But Reece Nelson performed really well against Dundalk. Yes, the opposition is really poor, and you can't really read something into that game. But rewards that performance, at least a spot on the bench. He didn't get any of that. And then obviously Pepe. I think Pepe is our top contributor this season. And he still hasn't got many opportunities to start against anyone in the Premier League. I think persisting with these two players is a fault of the coach, and Arteta has to adapt and change. Now, I'm not saying get the pitchforks out, let's throw Arteta out, but you have to ask questions of that performance. And those two players in general were very, very poor on the night. And I think Arsenal are going to have to be braver to be better going forward. And I think this is what the story of the season is going to be. Every game that we struggle to create, which is practically every game anyway, there are going to be questions asked. Now, if we struggle to create, but Arteta has used Aubameyang up front, he has used Pepe, he's used Saka in the front three, he's used Joe Willock, then I think fans will be much more sympathetic, because at least he's trying to improve the attack. But I think the longer he persists with Alex Lacazette, with Willian, he's going to get criticised pretty hard by the fan base. And that's justified, because I think those two performances were very poor and they deserved to be on the bench in this game, and they deserve to be on the bench going forward. They have to earn their place back. Lacazette now has to be in the Europa League squad. Same with Willian. They have to show against Molde in the next game that they are absolutely fighting to get back in the Premier League squad. I mean, not everyone is a fan of David Luiz, but if you watch David Luiz's performance against Molde on Thursday, and yes, again, the opposition was poor, but if you watch David Luiz's performance against Molde, it was a player who did not want to be in that squad longer. He wants to fight for his place in the Premier League. He wanted to be in the Premier League squad. David Luiz recognised that he was out of the team. Rob Holding had taken his place, so he was fighting to get back in. I don't sense that from Willian. Willian started against Molde and didn't look in particularly a star on the night. He didn't. And those players need to take a step on the sidelines now, and we need to go with something else going forward. But I guess now this brings up the point of the team structure, the setup, the way Arteta wants them to play football. Now, remember, when Mikel Arteta came on as Arsenal manager, we started with 4 at the back, with an attack of Lacazette and Aubameyang. Aubameyang was on the left, but we also used Reece Nelson, we used Nicolas Pepe, but we also used a creative player in Ozil behind him. It was a smart. Obviously he couldn't change and put his system in right away, but at the start, at least he was using combinations that I think people could get along with. I don't think we're maximising the combinations that we are, but also the style of play is too rigid. There is no creativity. They are kind of shackled in attack. they are way too rigid. And I keep mentioning that word, rigid. It is a rigid system which benefits no one in an attack. It's good defensively, apart from this game. It is good defensively, but in attack, it just helps no one. Who does it benefit? Ask that question to yourself. Who does that attack benefit? No one. No, maybe Lacazette. But if Lacazette's performing poorly, then it benefits no one. So Arteta has to be adaptive going forward. And hopefully this is a watershed moment for him where he sees this as a perfect opportunity to think, okay, I need to change it now. I need to try a different way. Because remember, and I mentioned it before, he's an inexperienced coach. He's been here not even a year yet. And yes, he does need time to implement his philosophy. He needs to learn the workings of how to be a coach, and he's going to make mistakes. That's the risk that you have when you hire an inexperienced coach. I mean, if you look at Juventus, they hired an inexperienced coach with Pirlo, and they recognise that he's going to take some time to learn the job. And it's the same with Arteta. I think he's going to make mistakes, and what we are doing in an attack at the moment is a mistake. So now we've just got to hope as a club and as fans of that club that he is intelligent enough to change it and to improve that attack. Now, it's not just on Arteta, even though he is partly to blame. It's not just on Arteta to improve the attack. We also have to speak about the lack of creative players in the squad. Now, I've got some listener questions about Ozil later, so I'm going to save that conversation for them. But the lack of creative players, I mentioned it in the Leicester podcast, that we have got rid of a lot of creative players. Players that were of degreeing success. So you have the Ramsey, the Cazorlas, who were fantastic players for us. Alexis as well. And then you had Wilshere, who was good at times, but injury prone. And even going back to the facts of Iwobi and Mkhitaryan, who were not excellent for us, but were at least creative players, linked players. And I go back to the fact of when we had Thomas Rosicky in the side, and he used to not get many goals or assists in a season. Yes, he was injured a lot, but whenever he was fit, Arsene Wenger used to use him a lot. And the reason why is because he was just this technical, secure player who could move the ball from that midfield to the attack and link up play. We have none of that anymore. Even someone like Joe Willock, I don't think can do it. Joe Willock is a different midfielder to the other ones in the side, but he's not going to be able to drive the ball forward and be creative. There are two skill sets missing: the link from the midfield to the attack and creativity in the final third. They are both missing, and it means that our attack is very pedestrian. Even if Alex Iwobi got 2 assists in a season, I think Alex Iwobi improves our attack because at least he would link the attack to the midfield. No one else in the team does that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have sold Iwobi because we got a very good deal for him. We 100% should have sold him. We were right. But not replacing him with a similar quality was bad. You look at the replacements. We replaced Alexis with Aubameyang. Aubameyang is a completely different player to Alexis. And remember, Aubameyang came 6 months after Lacazette had joined. That's bad squad planning, really. You have Wilshere and Cazorla leave, who were replaced by Guendouzi and Torreira. They are not link players to the attack. They are not creative. Then Ramsey leaves in the summer, as well as Iwobi and Mkhitaryan. Mkhitaryan leaves on loan. He left permanently this summer. And we replaced Iwobi really with Nelson/Saka. And we replaced Mkhitaryan with Pepe. Pepe, I don't think, is that creative compared to Mkhitaryan anyway. He's not a link player between the midfield and the attack. He's a very good counter-attacking winger. And then Nelson and Saka, they're kids. And they are both good players. Saka's a very special talent. Nelson, I think, has been unlucky with injury players. I think he would have more of a foothold into the first team right now. But not going into the transfer market to replace those players was a mistake. And now we're not using Ozil. We have no one. Absolutely no one. The only one that is creative in the team is Smith Rowe. And Smith Rowe is pretty injury prone and can't be relied on. He's still a kid as well. So it is a failure in the transfer market to not address this. Yes, we brought in Willian to be the creative player, but he looks way off the mark. So what are Arsenal going to do about it? And what is Arteta going to do about it? Is he going to release the shackles a bit so we can improve going forward? Be less rigid? Or is he going to have to delve into the transfer market to bring someone in of creativity? Maybe we go back in for Aouar. Maybe we go for Szoboszlai. I don't know, but this is something that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we're not getting anywhere this season. Absolutely nowhere. I mean, I said it on the Daily Cannon podcast that I think 5th or 6th is probably best for us. I think we're being kind, really. I think we finished 8th last season. We're pretty much still an 8th best team. What have we improved? Partey in midfield. I don't think Partey in midfield is that transformative that he's going to take an 8th place team to 4th. No way. You need a lot more than Thomas Partey to be a top 4 contender. So a bad day at the office yesterday. I asked on Twitter if there was any questions for the podcast. Again, if you want to ask me any questions, it's at AFC Met on Twitter. I have one from a Liverpool fan here, actually, and it's from at LFC Hadouken. And he asks, are Arsenal closer to Chelsea, United, Spurs bracket or Wolves, Everton, Leicester bracket? And I think this is a good question. The reason why I picked it out is because I think us fans want to be in the Chelsea, United, Spurs bracket. But I think our competitors at the moment are Wolves, Everton, Leicester. And that's just because now United I don't think are in the top bracket. It's more Chelsea, Spurs, really. And we're nowhere near Chelsea, Spurs. We're a million miles away from Liverpool and City, but I don't even think we're close to Chelsea or Spurs. United, Wolves, Everton, Leicester. That's where we are, really, realistically. So it's a shame. It's a massive fall from grace, but I mean, that's what happens when you sign poor players and the team's coached badly. We've had, at the end of the Wenger reign, I think we were poor. And then at the end of the Emery reign, we were poor. And now, under the Arteta reign, we're still not incredible. He hasn't transformed us, and I don't think any coach can. I think with the squad we've got now, I think we should be doing it a bit better in attack, but the squad we've got is not good enough, and I think it's just going to be a long time in the wilderness. I don't think we're going to be top 4 contenders next year. But what about the year after? That's where we should be aiming. We shouldn't be aiming every year to just get back in Champions League as quick as possible, because every year we try that, we keep making mistakes, and those mistakes are just going to keep us further away. The further away we go, the harder it will be to get back. So just accept where we are and build up from there. Because I think Arsenal fans will accept that we have to have a rebuild. I will definitely accept that we have to have a rebuild, but that has to be backed up by smart decisions in the boardroom, in the transfer market. You can't say we need to rebuild, it's going to take time, and then sign Willian on a 3-year deal. It just doesn't work. There's no logic into that. So thank you for your question. So the next question, so I'll read out a few of these actually. So at Ozil Things, the man himself, he just commented Ozil. At Damn It Arsenal was leaving Ozil, leaving out Ozil heading into the wrong direction. And at Arteta-esque 23 also asked something about Ozil, but he also asked other questions which I will answer in a bit. So the Ozil discussion, he's obviously been left out. We don't know the reasons why. Arteta says it's for footballing reasons. A lot of fans are speculating it may be something else. I would rather just the club come out and be honest about it. If it is something to do with non-footballing reasons, just be honest about it. I think it's difficult to see Ozil coming back. I would like to see him back because I like Mesut Ozil as a player, but I just don't see any way for him to come back. I think it's very difficult unless we see Arsenal sell some deadwood, so maybe Kolasinac in January leaves, then maybe Ozil can come back. But until then, there's no place for him. We have too many non-homegrown players. We have too many players on high wages who are not good enough and we need to get rid of. So Ozil won't come back in. And Ozil's, obviously, this is his last season. He's going to be leaving at the end of the year. And as a fan, and not analysing the situation, it is sad because I like Mesut Ozil. He's brought me many good memories. He is one of my favourite Arsenal players of all time. He's probably in my top 5. But there is no denying that he has declined since the World Cup in 2018. He is not the same player as 2015 Ozil. If it was 2015 Ozil, there would be no argument. But he has declined. He was still sort of creative when playing under Arteta, but he wasn't pulling up any trees. It's a difficult situation. I would much rather us just bring in a new creative player. But Arteta has to get results. Every time he doesn't get a result, fans are going to go and point to the Ozil situation and say, why are you leaving now out? Because he is the highest paid player at the club and arguably on his day the most talented. And when you leave him out for footballing reasons, you have to produce results, and that's what we're not doing at the moment. So it's a shame that he's going to leave like this. I'd like to see him back in the Premier League squad or Europa League squad in January, but I just don't see it personally. The next question, I will finish off Arteta-esque 23's question, where he says, what is going on Saliba? What are your worries for him? So Saliba, it's difficult because he's obviously, I think, had some personal tragedy in his life. We don't know what's happened behind the scenes, but I don't think there's any argument that he could be worse than what we have at the back. Now, I think he definitely has a path to the first team next year because we have Socrates leaving, David Luiz leaving, and Mustafi leaving, all in the same summer. There is a pathway to him. I think he'll go out on loan in January. I think it was pretty foolish to leave him out of the Europa League squad. He could have easily featured in the games against Dundalk or Molde. They are not very particularly difficult games. It is a shame. I worry about how much we spent on him for him to just play under 23 football. But hopefully we can send him back to Saint Etienne in January, and maybe next season he can be introduced into the team. Remember, he is still very young, so there is something there. And then he also, Arteta-esque, asks, is Willian the worst piece of business we've done in recent seasons, and why is Pepe being left out? Pepe, I don't know. I understand because I don't think he's that good on the ball. I think if you have Aubameyang and Pepe in the same team, you need a technically secure player as well. I think both Aubameyang and Pepe are very wasteful with the ball. I think Aubameyang doesn't want the ball. Pepe can be wasteful with it. He can lose it, mistouch, bad dribble. I think Pepe's form has been indifferent in terms of performances, but in terms of goals and assists, he's looked good this season. I think he's a good player that's in the wrong team, and I think Arsenal may never suit him unless we become a counter-attacking force. It's a shame. I wouldn't be surprised if Pepe left and done well elsewhere. It's just the way it is. In terms of the Willian business, the worst piece of business we've done in recent seasons. The jury's definitely out on Willian at the moment, but it's still quite early. I think in terms of length of the deal, yes, 100% yes. But in terms of worst business, the Xhaka and Mustafi deals really kind of pop into my head as bad deals. Lucas Perez as well. They were bad deals. At least Willian was no transfer fee, even if the wages were pretty expensive. And a final question from Bossil, at Bossil on Twitter, and he says, can you see any changes being made to the front three next weekend when it's been pretty much unchanged so far? I hope that the international break is good for Mikel Arteta and he goes into the Leeds game away from home with a fresh mindset and a fresh attack. I think a lot of fans, including myself, will be pretty upset and annoyed if Lacazette, Aubameyang and Willian is the front three. Like 2/3 of that front three needs to spend time on the bench / playing Europa League games. I think it is time for Pepe to start. It is time for Saka to be moved into the front three. Maybe it's time for Reece Nelson to get an appearance. Give these people chances to prove themselves in the Premier League. If they do bad and Willian and Lacazette play themselves back into form, then by all means, play them. But I just don't think it's fair on the youngsters to miss out, because it just shows that there's a hierarchy, and I don't think there should be. Everyone's place should be fought for. Now, that happened in midfield this week because El Neni won his place last week against Manchester United and kept it. Now, he performed poor against Villa, so what should happen? He should come off and someone else should have a chance. And that's what should happen in the front three. We seem to do it in pretty much every position apart from the front three. So I hope we see that for the Leeds game. And I just hope that's where we go going forward. Right, so that's all the questions for this week. And Thank you for all the questions. We had a decent chunk this week, so that's pretty impressive. So now we're going into an international break, and now we have to wait for hopefully another Arsenal win. And it's a shame that we're going in off the back of such a poor defeat. But hopefully we can come out against Leeds in much better spirit and a better coherent attack. But until then, I'll catch you next time, and come on, you Gunners.
Well, it's broken Kanu's way, and is right out of the centre. It's Kanu, what's he going to do? Oh! Can you believe it?